A woman sits motionless in a wheelchair. Dark sunglasses cover her eyes. Her hands rest limply in her lap. To anyone watching, she is the very picture of helplessness, a broken woman trapped in a body that no longer works, eyes that no longer see. Her husband walks past her. He doesn't acknowledge her presence. He doesn't speak to her. He doesn't even slow down. Because right behind him is another woman. They stop in the hallway, just 10 feet from the wheelchair. The husband pulls the woman close. Their lips meet in a kiss that is comfortable, practiced, familiar. The kiss of lovers who have been meeting for a very long time. Is she really blind? The woman whispers. Completely, the husband confirms. She can't see anything, can't hear us either. Her brain damage affected everything. So we can do whatever we want? Whatever we want, and soon we won't have to hide at all. Once I get power of attorney, we'll put her in a facility somewhere quiet. Then everything she owns becomes mine. They laugh together. The sound echoes through the hallway, cruel and careless. And the woman in the wheelchair? A single tear rolls down her cheek. But here's what her husband doesn't know. Here's what no one knows. That tear isn't from sadness. It's from rage. Because Amara Oko can see everything. She can hear everything. And in exactly 3 months, she is going to destroy every single person who betrayed her. What would you do if you discovered your husband was planning to steal everything you'd built, while you sat helpless, unable to fight back? What if the person you trusted most was counting down the days until they could throw you away like garbage? Amara Oko had built a 7 billion naira empire from nothing. She'd married a man she believed was her equal, her partner, her soulmate. But behind closed doors, while she pretended to be blind and paralyzed, she discovered that everyone she loved was plotting her destruction. And the worst betrayal? It wasn't her husband sleeping with other women in her own bed. It wasn't even her protégé, the young woman she'd raised like a daughter, being one of those women. No, the worst betrayal came from someone far closer. Someone whose treachery would shake Amara to her very core and nearly break her completely. But Amara had a plan. A dangerous, months-long deception that would expose every single person who had stabbed her in the back. This is the story of how a billionaire heiress faked blindness to test her husband, and how the truth she uncovered nearly destroyed her. Before we dive into this incredible story, if you love stories about strong women who refuse to be victims, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. Trust me, you are not going to want to miss where this story goes. And if you're already subscribed, drop a comment letting me know you're here. Let's get into it. 9 months before that wheelchair, before the dark glasses, before the elaborate deception that would consume her life, Amara Oko was untouchable. At 34 years old, she had accomplished what most people only dream about. She had built Oko luxury estates from absolutely nothing, from a single dilapidated property in Ikoyi that everyone else had written off as worthless. Where others saw decay, Amara saw potential. Where others saw problems, Amara saw profit. That one property became 2. 2 became 10. 10 became 100. By the time she turned 30, Oko luxury estates had spread across 12 African nations. Her portfolio exceeded 7 billion naira. Forbes Africa had featured her on their cover not once, not twice, but 3 times. They called her the Queen of African Real Estate. Business magazines fought for exclusive interviews. Young entrepreneurs studied her strategies like sacred texts. But here's what made Amara different from other billionaires. She was entirely self-made. No family money, no wealthy connections, no husband who opened doors for her. Amara had grown up in a modest home with a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. She had put herself through university on scholarships and sheer determination. She had built her empire brick by brick, deal by deal, sleepless night by sleepless night. And she never forgot where she came from. Her company funded scholarships for underprivileged students. Her foundation built schools in rural communities. She personally mentored young women who reminded her of herself, hungry, ambitious, desperate for a chance to prove themselves. In the boardroom, Amara was fierce, calculated, relentless. She could read a contract and spot the hidden trap within seconds. She could look at a property and calculate its true value faster than any appraiser. She had built a reputation for being fair but firm, generous but never foolish. But here's what most people didn't know about Amara Oko. Behind the boardrooms and business deals, behind the magazine covers and the 7 billion naira portfolio, she craved something money couldn't buy. Connection, partnership, someone who saw her, not her bank account, not her properties, not her power. Someone who loved the woman, not the empire. Amara had dated plenty of men over the years. Rich men who wanted to merge their wealth with hers. Ambitious men who saw her as a stepping stone. Intimidated men who couldn't handle being with a woman more successful than they were. She had almost given up on finding real love. And then she met Tobias Adeniran. It happened at an architecture conference in Cape Town. Amara was there to scout new designers for her latest development, a luxury resort that would redefine coastal hospitality. She sat in the front row, watching presentation after presentation, growing increasingly bored with the same recycled ideas. Then Tobias took the stage. He was tall, distinguished, with salt and pepper temples that gave him an air of wisdom despite being only 38. His voice was confident without being arrogant. His designs were revolutionary, structures that seemed to breathe with the landscape rather than fight against it. But what caught Amara's attention wasn't his architecture. It was the way he talked about his work. "Buildings aren't just structures," Tobias said, his eyes scanning the audience until they landed on her. "They're stories. Every wall, every window, every corridor tells the story of the people who will live there. Our job isn't to impose our vision, it's to listen to the dreams of others and give them form." After his presentation, Amara approached him. "I disagree with your philosophy," she said. Tobias raised an eyebrow. "Most people tell me they loved my presentation. Most people are afraid to challenge you. I'm not." She extended her hand. "Amara Oko." He smiled, a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I know exactly who you are, Miss Oko, and I'd love to hear why you think I'm wrong." They talked for 3 hours that night, then 3 more the next day. By the end of the conference, they had exchanged numbers, made dinner plans, and established something that felt rare and precious. They were equals. Tobias wasn't intimidated by Amara's success because he had his own. His designs graced skylines across the continent. He didn't need her money, her connections, her influence. He wanted her. 6 months later, they married in a ceremony that shut down Lagos society for 3 days. For 4 years, Amara believed she had found everything she'd been searching for. Tobias supported her late nights without complaint. He celebrated her victories without jealousy. He offered advice when she asked and stayed silent when she didn't. They traveled together, built together, dreamed together. Or so she thought. The shift began so subtly that Amara almost missed it. A distracted gaze during dinner, phone calls taken in other rooms, business trips that stretched a day longer than necessary. Small things, insignificant things, the kind of things a busy, successful couple might experience. Amara noticed. Of course she noticed. You don't build a 7 billion naira empire without learning to read people, without sensing when numbers don't add up, without recognizing when a story doesn't quite align with the evidence. But Amara didn't want to notice. She told herself she was overworked, projecting, letting stress infect her marriage. Tobias loved her. He had proven it 1,000 times. Why would he stray? She convinced herself to ignore the warning signs. And that desperate wanting to believe, it made her blind to what was right in front of her. The Zanzibar Gala was supposed to be a celebration. Oko Luxury Estates had just completed its most ambitious project yet, a beachfront resort that had taken 3 years and nearly $500 million naira to construct. 500 guests from across the globe had gathered for the grand opening. International press lined the red carpet. Champagne worth more than most people's annual salary flowed like water. And at the center of it all stood Amara Oko. She wore a custom gown that had taken 6 months to design, deep emerald silk that cascaded around her like liquid jewelry. Diamonds caught the light at her ears, her throat, her wrists. She was radiant, powerful, untouchable. The speeches had gone perfectly. The reviews were already glowing. Everything Amara had worked toward was crystallizing into success. But halfway through the evening, she needed a moment. The constant smiling was exhausting. The small talk was draining. She slipped away from the main ballroom, heading toward the private restrooms through a quiet corridor, hidden from the celebration. The hallway was dimmed, secluded, peaceful. And then she heard them. Hushed laughter, familiar voices, the unmistakable sound of intimacy. Amara pressed herself against the wall. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to walk away, to preserve whatever blissful ignorance remained. But she had built her empire by facing uncomfortable truths. She peered around the corner, and her world collapsed. Tobias, her husband, his hands tangled in the hair of a woman whose face Amara knew as well as her own. Zara, her protégée, her project. her almost daughter. Amara had discovered Zara 8 years ago, a brilliant young woman trapped in poverty, desperate for an opportunity, overflowing with potential. Amara had paid for her education, opened doors that would have remained locked forever, mentored her through every challenge, brought her into her inner circle like family. And now, Zara was pressed against the wall of Amara's resort, kissing Amara's husband like it was the most natural thing in the world. Their kiss wasn't rushed, wasn't guilty, wasn't the frantic collision of new lovers afraid of being caught. It was comfortable, practiced, familiar, the kiss of people who had been meeting for a very long time. Amara didn't gasp, didn't cry out, didn't storm toward them demanding explanations. She retreated silently, her emerald gown whispering against the marble floor. She returned to the ballroom. She smiled at guests. She posed for photographs. She delivered the keynote speech that brought 500 people to their feet in thunderous applause. No one knew. No one could tell that behind her radiant smile, something had shattered beyond repair. That night, Amara lay beside Tobias in the presidential suite. He slept peacefully, his breathing deep and even, his conscience apparently undisturbed. She stared at the ceiling and made a decision. She wouldn't confront him, wouldn't accuse him, wouldn't give him the opportunity to deny, deflect, gaslight her into questioning what she'd seen with her own eyes. No, she would expose him, completely, irrevocably, in a way that would leave no room for doubt, no possibility of spinning the narrative, no escape from consequences. But first, she needed the full truth. How long had this been going on? How many women were there? Did Tobias ever love her, or was she always just a means to an end, a wealthy, successful woman to exploit? Most women would have screamed, would have caused a scene, would have confronted the betrayers right there in that hallway. But Amara Oko hadn't built an empire by being impulsive. She had built it by being patient, strategic, ruthless when necessary. It was time to be all three. For 3 weeks, Amara lived a double life. By day, she was the same successful businesswoman she had always been, attending meetings, closing deals, managing her empire with precision and grace. By night, she lay beside a man she now knew was a stranger, her mind racing through possibilities, calculating risks, designing the most elaborate deception of her career. She consulted with medical professionals she trusted implicitly, doctors who owed their careers to grants from her foundation, specialists who understood the meaning of discretion. She needed them to help her stage a medical emergency, something dramatic, something convincing, something that would transform her from a powerful billionaire into a helpless victim. After extensive research, she settled on a rare neurological event, triggered, supposedly, by extreme stress and exhaustion. The symptoms would manifest suddenly and devastatingly, complete loss of vision. But Amara wasn't going to stop at blindness. She would also become paralyzed from the waist down, wheelchair-bound, utterly dependent on the care of others. The plan required more than just medical cooperation. Before her staged accident, Amara had her security team install surveillance throughout the entire estate. Cameras hidden in crown molding so subtly that even professional sweepers wouldn't detect them. Microphones embedded in decorative objects, vases, picture frames, light fixtures. Everything fed to secure servers that only Amara could access through encrypted channels. Voice-activated recorders would capture every conversation within range. Her smartphone would log every detail, dates, times, names, evidence. But she couldn't do this alone. She needed an ally, someone inside the house who knew the truth and could help manage the operation while maintaining the illusion. There was only one person Amara trusted that completely. Grace Okonkwo had been her chief of staff for 15 years. They had started together when Oko Luxury Estates was just a dream and a dilapidated building. Grace had witnessed every triumph, every setback, every sleepless night that had built the empire. She was more than an employee. She was family, real family. Amara told her everything. Grace listened without interrupting. When Amara finished, Grace was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "What do you need me to do?" "Manage the documentation, organize the evidence, pretend to be a grieving assistant watching her boss suffer, and most importantly, never ever let anyone suspect that I can see and hear everything they do." "And the end game?" "Exposure, complete, public, devastating exposure. When I'm done, every person who betrayed me will be destroyed in front of everyone they know." Grace nodded slowly. "Then let's begin. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Why not just confront Tobias? Why not simply file for divorce and walk away? But here's what you need to understand about Amara. She didn't want suspicion. She wanted proof. Undeniable, irrefutable, impossible to explain away proof. And more than that, she needed to know the full extent of the betrayal. How long had this been happening? How many others were involved? What was the ultimate goal? Was Tobias just a cheater? Or was he something far more dangerous? The day of her accident was meticulously orchestrated. A business meeting at Oko Luxury Estates headquarters. 47 witnesses, including board members, investors, and staff. The kind of high-profile event that would generate immediate attention and establish the accident's credibility beyond question. Amara waited until the meeting was at its peak, everyone focused, everyone engaged. Then she clutched her head, her face contorted in genuine-looking agony. She screamed, a sound so raw and terrifying that several attendees would later describe it as the worst thing they had ever heard. And then she collapsed. The chaos that followed was exactly what she had planned. Shouting, panic, someone calling emergency services, her body being carefully turned, assessed, stabilized. By the time Tobias arrived at the hospital, doctors were waiting with their rehearsed verdict. "Mr. Adeniran, I'm so sorry." The lead physician's voice was grave, perfectly calibrated. "Your wife has suffered a severe neurological event. The damage to her optic nerves is catastrophic, and the trauma has also affected her lower spinal functions." "What are you saying?" Tobias's voice trembled appropriately. "I'm saying that Mrs. Oko Adeniran is permanently blind, and she is paralyzed from the waist down. She will never see again. She will never walk again." Amara lay in her hospital bed, eyes closed beneath gauze bandages, listening to every word. Tobias's response contained all the right notes. Shock, grief, disbelief. He demanded second opinions, international specialists, experimental treatments. But Amara, whose ears had become hypersensitive in the past weeks, heard something beneath the performance. Calculation, the particular rhythm of a mind working through implications, the subtle undercurrent of someone seeing opportunity in tragedy. "We'll do everything possible," Tobias promised, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll take care of her, whatever she needs, for as long as it takes." That evening, Tobias wheeled Amara through the front doors of their mansion. He helped her into bed, arranged pillows around her frail-seeming form, brought water and medication. "I'm here, my love," he whispered, taking her hand. "We'll get through this together, I promise." Amara reached blindly for his touch, a performance of vulnerability that made her stomach turn. "What would I do without you? You'll never have to find out." He kissed her forehead. The gesture was tender, convincing. Anyone watching would have seen a devoted husband caring for his suffering wife. He left the room. Amara listened to his footsteps recede down the hallway, listened to him enter his study, listened to him close the door, and then she listened to him make a phone call. "It's happened. Yes, she's completely blind. The doctors confirmed permanent damage. No, she doesn't suspect anything. This changes everything, Zara. We need to accelerate the timeline." Amara lay perfectly still, her jaw clenched so tightly her teeth ached. She had suspected. Now she knew. But accelerate the timeline suggested something far bigger than an affair. Something larger. Something more sinister. The game had only begun. The first week established the pattern. To the outside world, Tobias Adeniran was the ideal husband confronting tragedy with grace. He helped Amara navigate the house, describing rooms and furniture in gentle detail. He read to her in the evenings, poetry, novels, business articles. He attended to her meals, her medications, her physical therapy. Anyone watching would have believed she was blessed to have such a devoted partner. But Amara wasn't watching. She was listening, recording, documenting, and what she discovered made her blood run cold. The second week, the mask began slipping. Tobias's patience shortened. His attentiveness became perfunctory rather than genuine. He started leaving her alone for longer periods, citing urgent business matters that required his attention elsewhere. The phone calls multiplied, always taken in other rooms, always hushed, always ending abruptly when he returned to her presence. He began treating her like an inconvenience rather than a wife. The third week, he stopped pretending entirely. Amara sat in her wheelchair by the window, a positioning she had requested specifically because it placed her near a hidden microphone. Tobias entered the house with another woman. They walked right past her, their conversation continuing as if she were a piece of furniture. "She really can't see anything?" The woman's voice was young, curious. "Nothing. She's completely helpless. And the paralysis? Permanent. She'll be in that wheelchair for the rest of her life. They kissed. Right there, 10 feet from Amara's chair. Then they went upstairs to the master bedroom, the bed Amara had shared with her husband for 4 years. Amara's hands gripped the wheelchair arms until her knuckles turned white, but her face remained expressionless behind her dark glasses. She was documenting everything, but the affairs weren't the worst of it. One night, Grace delivered her encrypted report with trembling hands. "I've been investigating the financial irregularities you noticed before your accident," Grace said through the secure earbuds. "Tobias is working with a lawyer named Kofi Mensah. Mensah specializes in corporate acquisitions and financial guardianship." The words hung in the air like poison. "He's going after power of attorney," Amara said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, he's building a case that your cognitive functions have been compromised along with your vision, that you're no longer capable of managing your business affairs. And if he succeeds, he gains control of Oko luxury estates, your properties, your investments, your bank accounts, everything. 7 billion naira, a lifetime of work, an empire built from nothing through sacrifice and determination. Tobias was positioning himself to steal all of it. But even that wasn't the final revelation. 2 weeks later, Amara listened to a conversation that confirmed her worst fears. Tobias was in the study with one of his mistresses, a woman whose voice Amara didn't recognize. "Once the paperwork goes through," Tobias said, his voice casual, confident, "we'll put her in a facility." "A facility?" "Some quiet place where she'll be taken care of. Good food, clean rooms, around-the-clock nurses. She'll never know the difference. She's blind anyway." "And then?" "Then we're free. All her money, all her properties, everything she built, it becomes ours." "What about her family?" Tobias laughed. "Her family will be the easiest part. Trust me." Amara sat in her wheelchair, listening to her husband plan to warehouse her like an inconvenient problem, to lock her away in some sterile facility while he stripped away everything she had ever created. And still, she waited, gathering more evidence, building an airtight case, preparing for the moment when she would emerge from her cage and destroy them all. Can you imagine hearing your own husband planning to lock you away like an inconvenient problem? Planning to steal your life's work while you sat helpless in a wheelchair? If this story is making your blood boil, drop a comment below and tell me, what would you do in Amara's situation? Would you confront him immediately? Would you run? Or would you do what Amara did and wait for the perfect moment to strike? And if you're on the edge of your seat right now, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that this story is worth sharing with more people who need to hear it. Because trust me, we're just getting started. Wednesday afternoon, Amara sat in her wheelchair in the sunroom, her dark glasses reflecting the light she pretended she couldn't see. She heard the front door open, heard familiar footsteps crossing the marble foyer, heard a voice that once filled her with pride and now filled her with disgust. Auntie Amara, Zara. Her protégé entered the sunroom with the confidence of someone who believed herself invisible to judgment. She settled into a chair close to Amara, close enough that Amara could smell her perfume. The perfume was expensive, Chanel, a gift Amara had given her for her 25th birthday, along with a card that read, "To the daughter I never had, your future is limitless." "How are you feeling today, Auntie?" Amara let her voice tremble slightly. "Better, thank you. Having visitors helps with the loneliness. I can only imagine how difficult this must be." Zara's hand reached out to cover Amara's. The touch was warm, convincing. Being trapped in darkness like this, unable to move, dependent on others. The words slithered over Amara like oil. "The company misses you," Zara continued. "Everyone is working so hard to maintain your vision. We're all committed to making sure Oko Luxury Estates continues to thrive." Your vision, Amara thought, while you conspire to steal it piece by piece. "I'm so grateful," Amara said aloud. "So grateful to have people I can trust handling things in my absence." "You can always trust me, Auntie. Always." They chatted for an hour. Zara performed affection with practiced ease, holding Amara's hand, straightening her blanket, promising to visit again soon. She talked about projects at the company, about industry developments, about how much she wished Amara could see the beautiful flowers she had brought. Every word was poison wrapped in silk. When Zara finally rose to leave, Amara heard her cross to the hallway, heard her meet Tobias by the staircase. The microphone in the light fixture captured everything. "How is she?" Tobias asked. "Exactly as pathetic as you said," She suspects nothing. Good. The guardianship paperwork is progressing faster than expected. Another month, maybe 6 weeks. And then? Then we take everything. The company, the properties, the investments, all of it. What about the facility you mentioned? Already identified a place, private, remote, excellent care supposedly. She'll be comfortable enough, not that she'll know the difference. They laughed together. The sound of their shared amusement carved itself into Amara's memory, sharp as broken glass, permanent as a scar. She sat perfectly still in her wheelchair, face expressionless behind her dark glasses. But inside, she was memorizing that laughter. She would replay it at the moment of their destruction. What I'm about to tell you changes everything, because until this point, Amara believed she understood the full scope of the betrayal. Her husband was cheating. Her protégé was complicit. They were planning to steal her company and lock her away. Horrible, devastating, but at least contained to 2 people she could identify and destroy. Then Grace discovered something that shattered that understanding completely. It was late, past midnight, when Grace arrived for their nightly encrypted briefing. But something was different about her demeanor. Her voice was strained. Her words came slowly, reluctantly. "I've been tracing the financial irregularities," Grace said. "The unauthorized transactions you asked me to investigate. The money that's been disappearing from the company accounts." "And?" "It's not Tobias." Amara felt a chill crawl up her spine. "What do you mean?" "The embezzlement, the theft. It's been happening for 7 years, long before you married Tobias, and the trail doesn't lead to him or Zara." "Then where does it lead?" Grace was silent for a long moment. "I need you to prepare yourself, Amara, because what I'm about to tell you..." Her voice cracked. "I verified it 3 times. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence is irrefutable. Tell me." "It's your mother." The words dropped into the darkness like stones into still water. "That's not possible. I traced the shell companies, followed the money through a maze of accounts in 4 different countries, but every single trail terminates at accounts controlled by Nkechi Oko. Your mother has been stealing from your company for 7 years. Amara couldn't breathe. Her mother, Nkechi Oko, the woman who had raised her alone after her father's death, who had worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, who had pushed Amara to dream bigger, work harder, reach higher than anyone in their family ever had. The woman Amara had supported, celebrated, and trusted without question for her entire life. How much? The question came out as a whisper. Nearly 200 million naira, possibly more. I'm still tracing older transactions. 200 million naira, stolen from the company Amara had built through sacrifice and sleepless nights. Stolen by the woman who should have been her greatest protector. What did she do with it? Properties you didn't know about, investment accounts in her name alone, a lifestyle far beyond what her supposed income could support. Grace paused. "She's been living like a wealthy woman for years, Amara, all of it funded by your work." The foundations of Amara's identity began to crack. She had built her sense of self on independence, on self-reliance, on the belief that she had risen from nothing through her own merit and determination. Her mother's encouragement had been the wind beneath her wings. But what if it was all a lie? What if her mother had always seen her as nothing but a source of income? "The worst part," Grace continued gently, "is that this started before Oko Luxury Estates became truly successful. She began skimming when you were still struggling, when you were working 18-hour days just to keep the company alive." Amara absorbed the implications. Her mother hadn't waited for Amara to become wealthy before exploiting her. She had started stealing when Amara had almost nothing, when every naira counted, when failure was a constant threat. She had been feeding on her daughter's dreams from the very beginning. "Does she know about Tobias and Zara?" Amara asked. "I don't think their schemes are connected. Tobias seems to be acting opportunistically. Your blindness gave him an opening he's exploiting. But your mother..." Grace's voice tightened. "Your mother has been playing a much longer game." Amara lay in the darkness of her bedroom, her fake paralysis suddenly feeling terrifyingly real. Her husband, her protégé, her mother, everyone she had trusted, everyone she had loved, all of them, in different ways, had decided she was worth more as a victim than as a person. The weeks that followed nearly destroyed her. Amara continued her performance flawlessly. The blind, paralyzed woman, the helpless heiress, the pathetic figure in the wheelchair that everyone either pitied or plotted against. But internally, she was fragmenting. Every interaction with Tobias reminded her of his betrayal, his casual cruelty, his calculating manipulations, his ability to kiss her forehead at night while planning her destruction by day. Every memory of Zara was now contaminated. The proud moments, watching her graduate, celebrating her first successful project, listening to her dreams for the future, all of them poisoned by the knowledge of what that daughter truly was. And every thought of her mother opened wounds that seemed bottomless. Amara stopped sleeping. Food became tasteless, mechanical. Fuel she forced into her body because dying wasn't part of the plan. The act of pretending became suffocating. Every smile required monumental effort. Every whispered, "Thank you," to Tobias felt like swallowing glass. The rage that had sustained her began transforming into something darker. Despair, self-doubt, the terrifying suspicion that maybe, just maybe, she had brought this upon herself. Maybe she had been blind long before her fake accident. Maybe her judgment was as broken as she pretended her body to be. Grace found her one night, sitting alone in the darkness of the study, tears soaking through her bandages. "Amara?" Grace's voice was soft, concerned. "What's happening? Maybe I should stop." The words came out cracked, defeated. "Expose them now. End this charade. I don't know if I can continue." Grace knelt beside her wheelchair. "Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want anymore." The tears came faster now, a dam finally breaking. "I thought I wanted justice, revenge, vindication. But the more I learn, the more I wonder if I even deserve any of it." Deserve it? My mother raised me, shaped me. Everything I am started with her. Amara's voice broke completely. What if I'm more like her than I realized? What if this capacity for deception, for manipulation, what if it's been inside me all along? What if I'm no better than any of them? Grace was silent for a moment. Then she reached out and took Amara's hands. "Amara Oko, listen to me." Something in her tone cut through the fog of despair. "You didn't steal from anyone. You didn't betray people who loved you. You didn't take advantage of someone's vulnerability. You built something real, something meaningful, through genuine work and sacrifice. The fact that other people chose to exploit your success doesn't diminish what you created. But I'm manipulating them now, lying, deceiving. To protect yourself, to uncover the truth, to prevent them from destroying you." Grace's grip tightened. "There's a difference between predator and prey, Amara, even when both are hiding." "What's the difference?" "Intent. The predator hides to attack, the prey hides to survive. Tobias is hiding his schemes to steal everything you've built. Zara is hiding her betrayal to profit from your destruction. Your mother has been hiding her theft for 7 years because she knows it's wrong." Grace paused. "You're hiding because they left you no other choice, because revealing the truth too early would have given them the chance to cover their tracks, spin the narrative, escape the consequences. And that makes it okay?" "It makes it different, and difference matters." Amara let the words settle into the empty spaces inside her. She had been so consumed by the betrayals, so shattered by the revelations, that she had lost sight of a fundamental truth. She wasn't like them. She never had been. "The party," Amara said finally. "It's scheduled for next month, my celebration of survival." "Yes, everyone will be there. My mother, Tobias, Zara, every person who smiled at me while planning my destruction." "What do you want to do?" Amara lifted her head. Behind the bandages, her eyes, perfectly functional, perfectly clear, hardened with renewed purpose. "I want them to see exactly what they've become, and I want the whole world to watch them fall." The plan came together with the precision of a military operation. Amara called it a celebration of survival, a party to thank everyone who had supported her during her difficult months. Tobias thought it was a wonderful idea and threw himself into the planning with enthusiasm. He had no idea he was helping to organize his own execution. 300 guests were invited. The elite of Lagos society, business leaders, politicians, socialites, journalists, family members, including Amara's mother, who had visited twice during the deception, each time performing maternal concern while carrying the weight of 7 years of theft. And of course, the betrayers. Zara would be there, smiling and supportive. Tobias's various mistresses would be there, thinking they were invisible. They would all be there. While Grace coordinated logistics, Amara prepared the evidence. 6 months of recordings, video and audio, meticulously edited and organized. Financial documents proving her mother's embezzlement. Legal paperwork prepared by her own attorneys, standing ready to file criminal charges, divorce proceedings, and restraining orders the moment the party concluded. The technical team had been briefed and sworn to secrecy. Every screen in the mansion, Televisions, projection displays, even guests' smartphones through a special app would activate simultaneously at Amara's command. There would be no looking away, no pretending not to see, no escaping the truth. The day before the party, Amara sat alone in her study, no longer pretending to be blind, but still maintaining the charade for Tobias, who believed she was resting. She looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back had changed. 6 months of deception had carved new lines into her face. 6 months of rage and despair had hardened something behind her eyes. But there was strength there too, the kind of strength that only comes from surviving the unsurvivable. Tomorrow she would reveal herself. Tomorrow she would destroy everyone who had betrayed her. Tomorrow the whole world would watch as Amara Oko rose from her wheelchair and brought judgment upon the guilty. But tonight she allowed herself one moment of doubt. What if it didn't work? What if Tobias found a way to spin the narrative, to paint her as a crazy woman who had staged a fake disability? What if her mother denied everything and somehow convinced people to believe her? What if all of this was for nothing? Amara closed her eyes and breathed deeply. Then she opened them, and the doubt was gone. If this failed, she would lose everything. But if she did nothing, she would lose everything anyway, and her betrayers would never face consequences. At least this way she had a chance. And Amara Oko had built an empire on nothing but chances. The night of the celebration, Oko Manor blazed with light. Every window glowed golden. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across marble floors. An orchestra played softly in the main ballroom, their music floating through corridors lined with fresh flowers and flickering candles. 300 guests circulated through the mansion, champagne glasses in hand, designer clothes rustling with every movement. They admired the art, complimented the decor, speculated quietly about the hostess and her tragic condition. At the center of it all sat Amara Oko. Her wheelchair was positioned near the middle of the grand ballroom, visible from every angle, impossible to ignore. Dark glasses covered her eyes. Her hands rested limply in her lap. She looked fragile, diminished, a shadow of the powerful woman she had once been. Guests approached her one by one, offering condolences, expressing admiration for her courage, murmuring about how inspiring her resilience was. Amara smiled weakly and thanked each one. Meanwhile, she catalogued every face. Her mother stood nearby, playing the devoted matriarch, holding Amara's hand, adjusting her blanket, performing concern with practiced ease. Every touch made Amara's skin crawl. Tobias circulated through the crowd, accepting compliments on his devotion as if they were medals of honor. He shook hands, made jokes, played the role of the perfect husband with nauseating conviction. Zara lingered near the bar, exchanging glances with Tobias whenever she thought no one was looking. Their restraint was almost impressive, almost. And scattered throughout the crowd, faces Amara had memorized from security footage, Tobias's other mistresses, completely unaware that they were attending their own public humiliation. The clock on the wall read 8:47. 13 minutes until 9 o'clock. 13 minutes until everything changed. We're about to reach the moment you've been waiting for. The moment when every single person who betrayed Amara Oko gets exposed in front of everyone they know. If you've made it this far, you're clearly invested in this story. And trust me, what happens next is unforgettable. Hit that subscribe button right now if you haven't already. Turn on that notification bell, because I promise you, the ending of this story is going to stay with you long after it's over. Now, let's watch Amara burn it all down. The clock struck 9. Amara raised one hand, a weak, trembling gesture that drew the attention of those nearby. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but somehow carrying. "Could I have everyone's attention, please?" The murmur of conversation faded. The orchestra stopped playing. 300 faces turned toward the blind woman in the wheelchair. Tobias moved closer, his expression arranged into supportive concern. Her mother stepped back slightly, maintaining her position of maternal devotion. Zara drifted toward the edge of the crowd, trying to remain inconspicuous. Someone handed Amara a microphone. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began. Her voice was exactly what they expected, fragile, grateful, touched by tragedy. "These past 6 months have been the most challenging of my entire life." Sympathetic nods. Understanding murmurs. Learning to live without sight. Learning to depend on others when I had always depended only on myself. Learning to trust the people around me to care for me when I couldn't care for myself. She paused, and the silence in the room grew heavy. "But I've learned something else too, something far more valuable than anything I've ever learned in business." Another pause. Longer this time. I've learned that when people believe you can't see them, they reveal exactly who they truly are. The energy in the room shifted. Something in Amara's voice had changed, subtle but unmistakable. The weakness was fading, replaced by something harder. I've learned who truly loves me. Her voice grew stronger. And I've learned who has been lying to me, manipulating me, and planning to destroy me. Tobias's smile faltered. Mother, Amara said, her voice now clear and commanding, would you come stand beside me, please? Nkechiyoko hesitated for just a moment, long enough for those watching closely to notice, then moved to her daughter's side, confusion flickering across her features. Tobias, please join us. He walked over, still trying to maintain his supportive expression, though something in his eyes had begun to sharpen with suspicion. And Zara, I'd like you here as well. Zara emerged from the crowd, her face a careful mask of concern. The three of them stood beside Amara's wheelchair, the devoted mother, the loving husband, the loyal protege, forming a tableau of family unity. 300 guests watched in curious silence. And then Amara moved. Her hands gripped the arms of the wheelchair. Slowly, so slowly that the movement seemed almost impossible, she began to rise. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Amara stood. Her legs, supposedly paralyzed for 6 months, supported her weight without trembling. Her posture, supposedly broken, straightened with the confidence of a woman who had never been defeated. She reached up and removed her dark glasses. Her eyes, clear, focused, sharp as obsidian, swept across the room, landing on each face with perfect precision. I can see, she announced, her voice ringing through the stunned silence. I have always been able to see. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. For 6 months I pretended to be blind and paralyzed. I sat in this wheelchair and let everyone believe I was helpless, dependent, broken. She turned to face Tobias directly. I did it to see what my husband would do when he thought I couldn't see, how he would treat me when he believed I couldn't stop him, what plans he would make when he assumed I was powerless. Tobias's face had gone pale, and I saw everything. Amara pulled a small remote from a hidden pocket in her dress and pressed a button. Every screen in the mansion blazed to life simultaneously. The televisions, the projection screens, even the smartphones of guests who had connected to the mansion's Wi-Fi, all of them displaying the same footage. Tobias with a blonde woman in the master bedroom, Tobias with a brunette in the living room, Tobias with a redhead in the kitchen, Tobias with Zara, everywhere, repeatedly for months. The footage played without sound at first, letting the images speak for themselves. 300 guests stared in horrified fascination as their host's husband paraded across screen after screen with woman after woman, all within the very house where they now stood. Then the audio began. Once the paperwork goes through, we'll put her in a facility. Some quiet place where she'll be taken care of. She'll never know the difference. Then we're free. All her money, all her properties, everything she built becomes ours. The room was frozen, horrified, unable to look away. Amara watched Tobias's face as his entire world crumbled in real time. You thought I was trapped, she said softly. Helpless, dependent on you for everything. He couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed, but no words emerged. But I saw everything, heard everything, recorded everything. She let the weight of that settle. And now, so has everyone else. The screens continued cycling through footage as Amara turned to face the second betrayer. The affairs were painful, she said, her voice steady. Discovering that my husband was planning to steal my company and lock me away, that was devastating. She paused. But it wasn't the worst thing I discovered. Nkechiyoko seemed to shrink slightly, though her face remained composed. 7 years ago, Mother, you started stealing from my company. A ripple of shocked whispers spread through the crowd. Small amounts at first, careful transactions hidden within legitimate expenses, shell companies in countries with favorable banking laws. You were very sophisticated about it. Amara, I don't know what you're... Don't. The single word cut through the air like a blade. Don't insult my intelligence by denying it. I have every transaction, every transfer, every account number. The evidence is irrefutable. The screens shifted, now displaying financial documents, spreadsheets, bank records, corporate filings, all tracing a clear path from Oko luxury estates to accounts controlled by Nkechiyoko. 200 million naira, Mother, possibly more, stolen from the company I built, stolen while you smiled at me across dinner tables and told me how proud you were. Nkechi's composure finally cracked. Amara, you don't understand. I Understand perfectly. Amara's voice shook now, but not with weakness, with controlled fury. You watched your daughter work 18-hour days. You watched me sacrifice relationships, health, happiness, everything, to build something meaningful. And while I was struggling to survive, you were feeding on my efforts like a parasite. I'm your mother. You're a thief. The word echoed through the silent ballroom. You bought properties I didn't know about, investment accounts in your name alone, a lifestyle funded entirely by my work, my sacrifice, my dreams, all while playing the proud mother, the supportive parent, the woman who taught me everything I know. Amara stepped closer to her mother, and for the first time, real pain cracked through her anger. Do you have any idea what this did to me, Mother? Discovering that the woman I trusted most in the world, the woman I would have given anything to, had been stealing from me since the beginning. Nkechi said nothing. You made me doubt myself, made me question everything I'd achieved, made me wonder if I was just as corrupt as you deep down without even knowing it. You never meant to get caught. That's the only thing you never meant. Amara's voice hardened again. Well, now you're caught, in front of everyone you know, in front of everyone who ever believed your performance of maternal love. She gestured to the crowd, many of whom were staring at Nkechi with expressions of disgust and disbelief. Look at them, Mother. Look at what they see now, not the devoted parent, not the proud matriarch, the woman who robbed her own daughter blind. Amara's lawyer stepped forward from his position near the edge of the crowd. He carried a briefcase that contained documents prepared months in advance, waiting for this exact moment. Criminal charges are being filed against all three of you, Amara announced. Financial fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. She addressed Tobias directly. Divorce proceedings begin tomorrow morning, and before you start calculating how much you'll walk away with, the prenuptial agreement you tried so hard to circumvent remains ironclad. You get nothing. She turned to Zara. Every door I open for you closes today. Every connection I gave you dissolves. Every opportunity I created for you ends. The architecture world will know exactly what you are by morning. Finally, she faced her mother again. As for you, I'll see you in court. The lawyer began distributing envelopes to Tobias, to Zara, to Nkechi. Legal documents spelling out the consequences of their betrayals in cold, precise language. Amara addressed the crowd one final time. Now you all know the truth. The man I married never loved me. He loved my money. The woman I raised as a daughter sold her loyalty for promises of power, and my mother. Her voice cracked, just slightly. My mother saw me as nothing but a source of income, a well to be drained, a means to an end. She let the silence stretch. The truth nearly destroyed me. Learning what they'd done, what they'd planned to do, made me question everything about myself, who I was, what I was capable of, whether I deserved any of what I'd built. She straightened, and when she spoke again, her voice was iron. But I realized something. Their betrayals don't define me. My response does. She began walking toward the exit. The crowd parted before her like waves before a ship. I'm still Amara Oko. I built an empire before any of them touched my life, and I'll build another long after they're forgotten. At the doorway, she paused and turned back. The difference is, now I know exactly who I can trust. Her eyes found Grace, standing loyally in the corner, tears streaming down her face. And who I can't. One final look at Tobias, at Zara, at her mother, frozen in their shame before everyone they had ever known. Goodbye. Amara Oko walked out into the night. Behind her, chaos erupted. Shouting, accusations, the sound of a reputation collapsing in real time. But Amara didn't look back. She had seen enough. The aftermath was swift and merciless. By the time the sun rose the next morning, news of the party had spread across every social media platform in Nigeria. Video clips, recorded by guests on their phones, went viral within hours. News channels led with the story. International media picked it up by noon. Billionaire heiress fakes blindness to expose cheating husband. Shocking betrayal, mother stole millions from own daughter. The woman who saw everything. Tobias Adeniran's reputation disintegrated overnight. Clients canceled contracts. Partners severed ties. Architecture firms that had once competed for his attention issued public statements distancing themselves from his name. Within a week, he was professionally radioactive, unable to find work anywhere on the continent. The divorce was finalized in record time. The prenuptial agreement, which Tobias had been working so hard to circumvent, proved utterly unbreakable. He walked away with nothing but the clothes on his back and criminal charges pending. Zara vanished from public life entirely. Her architectural license was suspended pending investigation. Every professional connection she had ever made, all of them ultimately traceable back to Amara's influence, dissolved. The industry that had embraced her as a rising star now treated her as a pariah. And Nkechi Oko faced the full weight of the justice system. The financial evidence Amara had compiled was overwhelming. 7 years of theft, meticulously documented. Bank records, transaction histories, property deeds, investment accounts. The case was so airtight that Nkechi's lawyers advised her to plead guilty immediately. She refused. The trial became a public spectacle. Cameras in the courtroom, daily coverage in every newspaper, social media commentary tracking each revelation. In the end, Nkechi was convicted on 17 counts of financial fraud and embezzlement. She was sentenced to 12 years. Amara attended every day of the trial, sitting in the front row, her eyes never leaving her mother's face. She didn't speak to her, didn't visit her after the verdict, didn't respond to the letters Nkechi sent from prison. Some wounds, Amara had learned, couldn't be healed. They could only be survived. 1 year later, Amara stood on the terrace of her new headquarters. The building was her own design, created in collaboration with architects who had nothing to do with her past. It rose 20 stories above Lagos, its glass facade reflecting the city that had witnessed her triumph and her near destruction. Inside, Oko Luxury Estates operated stronger than ever. The scandal had actually helped business. Her story had inspired millions, particularly women who had faced their own betrayals and wondered if recovery was possible. Her book, a memoir titled Eyes Wide Open, had spent 47 weeks on bestseller lists. It had been translated into 32 languages. Film rights had been purchased by a major studio. But more important than any of that was what had happened inside Amara herself. The cracks that had formed during those months of darkness hadn't fully healed. Perhaps they never would. There were still nights when she woke in a cold sweat, haunted by her mother's face. There were still moments when a familiar perfume or a certain phrase triggered memories that felt like fresh wounds. But she had learned to live with the cracks, to find strength in the broken places, to trust more carefully without losing the ability to trust entirely. The truth she had uncovered had nearly destroyed her, but it had also set her free, free from illusions she had carried for decades, free from relationships built on manipulation and lies, free to build something new on foundations of absolute unflinching truth. The afternoon sun warmed the terrace as Amara reviewed plans for her newest development, an affordable housing project that would provide homes for families who reminded her of the one she had grown up in. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Oko?" She turned. A man stood in the terrace doorway, tall, with an easy smile and intelligent eyes. He held a tablet displaying architectural renderings. "I'm Kwame Asante, the new project architect. I wanted to discuss the foundation specifications for the Oronchoki development." Amara studied him for a moment. Professional demeanor, confident but not arrogant, looking at her like a colleague, not a commodity. "The foundations," she said. "How appropriate." "Ma'am?" "Nothing." She gestured toward a seating area. "Show me what you've designed." They worked together for nearly 2 hours. Kwame was thoughtful, competent, and, refreshingly, unafraid to disagree with her when he had better ideas. He didn't defer automatically to her wealth or her reputation. He engaged with her proposals on their merits and defended his own with quiet confidence. When they finished, he gathered his materials to leave, then hesitated at the doorway. "Miss Oko, I read your book." Amara tensed slightly. She never knew what to expect from people who mentioned the book. "What you went through," Kwame continued. "I can't imagine the strength it required, to maintain that deception for months, to watch people you loved reveal themselves as enemies, and then to rebuild everything afterward." "It didn't feel like strength at the time," Amara said honestly. "It felt like survival, like I was drowning and clawing for any handhold I could find. Sometimes those are the same thing." He paused. "I lost my father to cancer 3 years ago, watching him fade, being helpless to stop it. I know it's not the same as what you experienced, but I learned something during that time." "What's that?" "Survival is the foundation. Everything else, strength, hope, healing, it all gets built on top of survival. The people who judge how you survived, they usually haven't had to survive anything themselves." Amara felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition, the sense of meeting someone who understood weight because they had carried their own. "Would you?" Kwame started, then stopped himself. I'm sorry, that's inappropriate. You're my employer. What were you going to ask? I was going to ask if you'd like to continue this discussion over coffee sometime. Away from the office, there are ideas about sustainable design I think you'd find interesting. He smiled ruefully. But that crosses professional boundaries, and I understand if… Coffee, Amara said, surprising herself. Just coffee. We'll see where it goes. Kwame's smile widened. That's enough for now. He left, and Amara turned back to the city spread below her, the city she had helped build, that had witnessed her rise and her near fall and her resurrection. Her instinct had been to decline, to protect herself, to maintain the walls she had constructed so carefully over the past year. But walls that kept out pain also kept out possibility, and Amara Oko had not survived everything she had survived just to spend the rest of her life hiding from the world. The story wasn't over, it was only beginning, and this time, her eyes were wide open. Amara Oko learned something powerful during those 6 months of darkness. When people believe you can't see them, they reveal exactly who they truly are. Tobias showed his real self when he thought she was helpless. A man who had married her fortune and was waiting for the right opportunity to claim it. Zara's loyalty evaporated the moment she believed there would be no consequences, revealing that her gratitude and affection had always been performances. And her mother's love, which Amara had trusted without question for 34 years, turned out to be nothing but a mask, covering 7 years of theft and betrayal. But here's what nearly broke Amara, and what ultimately saved her. The truth doesn't just expose others, it exposes us. It forces us to look clearly at who we've been trusting, at what we've been ignoring, at the warning signs we chose not to see because seeing them would have been too painful. Amara could have let that truth destroy her, could have let the weight of triple betrayal crush whatever remained of her ability to trust, to love, to hope. Instead, she let it transform her. She emerged from that wheelchair not as the same woman who had sat down in it 6 months earlier. She emerged stronger, wiser, and infinitely more valuable to herself. Maybe you don't need to fake blindness to discover the truth about the people in your life. Maybe you just need to start paying attention to the small signs you've been dismissing, to the inconsistencies you've been explaining away, to the moments when someone's words don't quite match their actions. The people who truly love you will prove it when they think no one is watching. And the people who don't, they'll reveal themselves too. The question is, are you willing to see it? If Amara's story moved you, inspired you, or made you think about your own life differently, hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done in Amara's situation? And if you haven't already, subscribe to Mr. David Love Stories for more incredible stories of love, betrayal, triumph, and transformation. Every story on this channel is designed to not just entertain you, but to give you something valuable to carry with you into your own life. Remember what Amara learned. Sometimes the person who appears blind sees more clearly than anyone else in the room. And sometimes the best way to discover the truth about others is to let them believe you can't see what they're doing. Amara played blind, but she saw everything. And when she finally opened her eyes, the whole world saw the truth too. Until next time, my friends, keep your eyes wide open.